I appeared once again on Piers Morgan Uncensored. I've been reviewing these when I go on. You can obviously, on Piers' channel, watch the full thing, but I'll show you the moments where I had a chance to speak and then some of the context with what the other folks were saying. As I've mentioned to you before, unfortunately, while always Piers Morgan was to the right of me, he's definitely gone more in the MAGA direction. And some say that he's subject to audience capture in a way that is leading him to realizing as his show gets more successful, he's sort of feeding MAGA folks what they want. And it is serving him algorithmically, unfortunately. But because of that, these appearances are just, I never know what I'm going to get, right? And sometimes it's a very 3v1 or something like that situation. Here, Piers Morgan starts off the show as an example with, isn't it so incredible how everyone is responding to Trump's win, and the fact that they're not really, the left even isn't going that crazy, and that we're finding Piers Morgan and Glenn Beck are finding this common ground, and we're all just so happy, is proof of how good the thing was. And that's my summarization of it. And I jump in here after one of the other contributors to give my take.
Through it, and so does he. Amala, it feels to me, I mean, just this dancing alone that is going on all over America and the lack of mass protests feels very, very different to when Trump won last time. Are you sensing that?
Yes, 100%. And I think a lot of it has to do with the rhetoric that's been surrounding Trump. And I think this collective realization that we no longer have to be fearful of supporting this man, and we can actually be excited about his second term. You know, prior to this 2024 election, he's been called a fascist, a dictator on day one, an authoritarian. He's been likened to Hitler. And I think that created an environment where a lot of people felt like they had to sort of speak in hushed tones about their support of Donald Trump. Some of the exit polling on election day found that young men in particular were more likely than any other demographic to sort of hide or lie about who they were supporting for president. And now that we've gone through this election cycle, the veil is lifted a little bit. People are coming out and they're dancing. They're talking about what this future could look like over the next 4 years. And I don't think they feel as afraid to speak up about these things. Even the media is going and speaking to Donald Trump. And these are publications that would have recently referred to him as Hitler or a fascist. So I think the tables are turning a little bit.
Well, they're even heading down there to kiss the ring, which I never thought I'd see from some of the MSNBC anchors. Luke Beasley, are you joining in the dancing? Are you secretly bopping away there to Young Man by Village People?
Absolutely not. I think
you've got to laugh at that. I mean, before I let you go, before you start, you have to laugh at the irony that the guy that everyone on the left calls the biggest bigot in America chose the #1 gay anthem as the one he would dance to on stage. Yeah. I mean, come on. It's funny.
Heartwarming. So here's what I wish some of you would engage with, which I haven't heard. After Biden won, the MAGA side at large, Trump himself, didn't accept. I haven't heard you, Piers, say, wow, it's so impressive that whenever our side loses, even though a lot of MAGA folks were saying, if the left loses, they're never going to accept it, they're going to riot this time, it's going to be crazy. We actually accepted it.
Well, not only have I said that, hang on, Luke, hang on. Not only have I said that, I also said,
the point. Come on, for like 2 seconds.
It
is really interesting, before playing a little bit more, and I'll go back a little so you see context, how with the conservatives on the panel, they get these beautiful, full answers. And every time I've gone on, I feel like especially when I'll start making a point that is pretty solid, Piers goes, wait, hold up. But what you're about to see, shockingly, is that Piers Morgan admits ultimately that I'm correct. Accepted, they're going to riot this time, it's going to be crazy. We actually accepted it.
Well, not only have I said that, hang on, Luke, hang on. Not only have I said that, I also said,
Come on,
hang on,
for like 2 seconds.
You challenged me. I'm going to respond to that one point, which is actually, I said to Trump's face, I thought it was disgraceful he didn't accept the election result. All right, and I did say that the Democrats deserve credit for the peaceful transfer. So you're completely wrong about that.
No, that during better Piers times you did do that, but I'm talking about just
better Piers
a general
times.
understanding.
You mean when you agreed with me?
I wish the MAGA side would do introspection and go, wow, it's not that the left is going, oh, we just love Trump now. It's that we're demonstrating to you what acting like an adult looks like and not lying about the election, not crying for years and years about it, and instead going, even though we still believe Trump has these fascistic tendencies, I still believe he's a threat to our democracy. I'm going to show you what caring about democracy looks like. That's what Biden has done.
Let me respond.
That's what Kamala Harris has done.
Let me respond.
Go for it.
When you say you're not crying about it, you might not be. But all I've seen in the last 2 weeks are people, women in particular, all over TikTok, screaming, cutting their hair off, saying they're never going to have sex with the Trump voter again. And now there's a mass exodus from X because Elon Musk owns it and he's next to Trump. From people like Bette Midler, Barbara Streisand, Don Lemon, you name it, off go the lefties. So I'm afraid there is a massive amount of toys out of the stroller going on. So, you know, you can say all you like. You say all like what great losers you are. All I've seen is a lot of squealing and resigning from platforms because they lost.
You're doing a huge disservice to your audience, putting on the same discussion, trying to overthrow an election, putting together fake electors to prevent the peaceful transfer of power, trying to get local officials to find fraudulent votes that don't exist. You're putting that on in the same category as people just being upset, like has happened every time people lose, always, in a way that's completely peaceful. And I've gone through this before on this show specifically, which is you have to look at people in positions of power to really get a sense of the significant responses we're seeing to certain things. So when you look at powerful Democrats, I told you before, Vice President Harris, Biden with character and integrity respected these results, whereas Trump, him being the person in a position of power, not some random person on TikTok, didn't do that.
I agree. Listen, you know what, Luke? I agree with you. I totally agree with you on that. So, you know, just for what it's worth, I agree with you. Let me bring in Emma.
What? That never happens on these panels. Kudos to Piers for doing that, because I think sometimes we socially disincentivize just admitting when you're wrong. And I think as I was talking, he realized bringing up people on TikTok going, I'm so angry, is not even relevant to whether or not relevant, powerful, prominent Democrats in positions of power did the high integrity, or more specifically, in favor of democracy response, or the anti-democratic response that we saw from Trump. I said this in my conversation with Isabella Moody. While it is a subset of a subset of a subset, we had a difficult time finding very many clips to put in that segment when I wanted to reference the people shaving the hair off. I'd rather be on the side that the worst you see is someone shaving their head when they lose, than the side where the worst you see is they storm the Capitol because of lies that a president was telling to justify trying to overturn an election with things like I mentioned there, the fake elector scheme, etc. Pretty easy decision there, and I'm happy that he acknowledged, okay, well, when you put it that way, I concur. Then a big subject of discussion on this panel was the trans member of Congress, and specifically Nancy Mace, saying, I don't want the trans woman in the woman's bathroom. We talked about this in numerous segments, and here I get a chance to respond on that.
Because
you know why? You know why? Because they don't win.
Moral panic,
they don't win
like it was
because they have inferior physiology.
Just like it was about how seductive.
We don't hear about it because it's not an issue. Because they can't win.
No,
let me bring in Luke.
Because these are issues that are tittillating to white liberals or
tittillating.
White,
How weird you would say titillating.
Suburbs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, what's ridiculous is that
for you it clearly is. You're not focusing on the more systemic rape issue in our prisons and in our our facilities in this country.
You haven't asked me about that.
But I just did. Why haven't you been talking about male rape and male
I think it's terrible.
Way
Shameful.
more likely to occur than a trans.
Luke, jump in.
Then dedicate more segments to it then. Dedicate more segments to it.
I'll take your advice on what segments we should be doing. We are the fastest growing YouTube channel in the world, so we're probably getting it about right. Luke.
Okay, yeah. So I do think with all these things, even the Lake and Riley case as an example, we always want to be super understand the gravity and the pain of the individual stories that we're talking about that connect to larger issues, but then also include the broader context, which is that with this bathroom issue, you don't see in the data increase in assaults with trans people in the bathroom they identify with, but you do see when they're forced to go into the bathroom they don't identify with or that's aligned with the biological sex they were born as, an increase in assault on the trans person. So that's important to remember. And I don't think we need to merge every single issue, because I think, as Emma referenced, but as a lot of people acknowledge, while we don't understand what the fixation is necessarily or why this is used to distract from all these other more consequential issues, I don't think most people have an issue with leagues, especially professional leagues, implementing restrictions to make sure things are fair. Sometimes that's, have you transitioned enough where you don't have the edge or whatever it might be. It's fine for those leagues to make sure that it's fair. And I don't think that debate is actually going on like this program might make it out to be.
Okay, so we're going to move on to another. We're going to move on to something else. I mean, look, I just don't think there is any debate to be had about the sport issue. I totally agree.
But on the bathroom.
Well, hang on. I totally agree with.
Didn't I? I don't think he heard what I said. I told him that here.
Debate to be had about the sport issue. I totally agree.
But on the bathroom.
Well, hang on. I totally agree with Trump about the sports thing. Trans women athletes should not be allowed to compete against women. They should have their own category, or they should compete against a category most of them used to compete in, which is the men's category. But the reason they don't is they're making far more money and they're far more successful competing against women because they have an unfair advantage. And that's what's wrong with it. Anyway, I want to move on to...
Yeah, so my mic was kind of quiet there, but I said, I don't think you were hearing what I'm saying. Because they were swinging back and forth between bathrooms and then athletes and bathrooms and athletes. And those are two separate issues, both that should be treated with common sense and compassion. But it's wild, the nuance that is lost. So on the bathroom one, actually, there's less nuance because of the data that I mentioned. I hate referencing this because clearly we don't agree on what common sense is. But it seems pretty reasonable to go, let's just do it how we've always done it, as Trump in 2016 said, by the way. And I think some women would be very confused if a trans man, and all they'd know is that just a man walked into the women's restroom. If that was happening, and they would be way more confused, even MAGA women, than a trans woman who most likely they'd never even know. And why would they really care? And then the important part of this is if you do the MAGA solution, we do know based on the data that would exacerbate assault on trans people, but the other way around, it doesn't exacerbate assaults or a lack of safety in bathrooms. So that one, okay, seems pretty clear and simple. And then a separate subject, the trans athletes thing, I would say a little bit more complicated, but as I've referenced before, especially high-level leagues, of course, have the ability and are doing this and should do this to implement their own rules that ensure fairness. And we all understand how fairness could be lost in certain sports. And doing so in a way that's, again, compassionate and common sense. And many of them are doing that. I referenced one of the ways that some choose to in that segment. Then you have us talking about the setup to this was that Mika Brzezinski, Joe Scarborough went down to that really questionable meeting with Donald Trump. And this led to Piers again getting on the thing that he's the most obsessed with, which is everyone calls Trump Hitler, which some random people on the internet I'm sure do. But talking about how John Kelly said Trump wanted Hitler's generals, which was Trump's language. Trump brought it up, not us. Or pointing to authoritarian tendencies of people, Hitler or other people, and saying, let's make sure we're not normalizing rhetoric that we've seen be really harmful in the past. And Trump chooses to use certain rhetoric that mirrors that of past authoritarians. That's not calling Trump Hitler, the new Hitler, literally Hitler. It's none of those things. But Piers brings it up constantly. It's so strange. And here is how that played out.
Don't call him Hitler.
Oh, by the way, please do click the subscribe button. Piers says his channel's the fastest growing to everyone else. I say, let's make ours the fastest growing one.
No, they didn't. And an existential threat to democracy. And if you really believe that, it's a bit like Biden inviting Trump for a little, cheerful, chappy photo shoot at the White House. If you really think he's going to finish democracy in America, if you really think he's a fascist, if you really think he's a neo-Nazi, why would you do that?
It's so disingenuous, and that was a lot of Republicans'
Emma, I'll come to you, especially if you agree with me.
You have your time,
groundbreaking
okay?
moment.
Don't worry.
But Deborah, you go first.
And I should say, as we're learning more about this meeting, I don't think meeting with a bad person by itself is bad. It depends on how you use that meeting, just like having a conversation with someone publicly is not bad, no matter how bad they are, but how you conduct yourself in that conversation could be bad. It seems like Mika and Joe were afraid of Trump's retribution and went down to flatter him, and that is bad. So that's a separate point than me making sure he doesn't get to keep getting away with this. Oh, you all called him Hitler.
Joe Biden put on the Donald Trump hat, and as somebody who is a very proud Jew, I'm sick, and we're all sick of the left, even the right, using Jewish atrocities to try and garner the vote for their horrific policies that don't help Jews, they don't help Americans, they don't help anybody, they just destroy America. And so I think it's disgusting that people have been calling Trump Hitler, but it also aligns, they want us to believe that they're saying Trump is Hitler, but then also we have such safe and secure elections in the past, and they would never do anything in this country to ever stop Trump from winning the election. If you thought Donald Trump was truly modern-day Hitler and would be a horrific leader to this country, would you not genuinely do everything in your power to stop him from getting into office?
Of course.
Because if I truly believed that Joe Biden was Hitler, I would do everything, legal or not, to try and stop him from getting into office, because Hitler is the worst person in probably all of history, but definitely modern history.
Do you know what? I went to the. Do you know what, Deborah? I went to the
exterminator.
I went to the Madison Square Garden rally. Do you know how many protesters turned up when Hitler came to the middle of Manhattan, the great liberal democracy, in their iconic venue? 150 bothered to get off their lazy backsides from screaming Hitler and fascism for years to go and protest.
I was there too, Piers.
They couldn't be bothered because you know what? It's almost like they didn't believe what
at a Trump rally.
It's like they didn't believe what they were saying, right? Emma, you wanted to agree with me, so I'll come to you.
So there.
And then Emma goes on to say that at one point Piers was also mischaracterizing what fascism is. When we say he's fascistic, we're not saying that he's Hitler. What? Y'all are getting everything. You're the one who says that more than anyone. The phrase Trump is Hitler is said more on the Piers Morgan show by Piers Morgan than any liberal I've ever heard. I've already explained it to you. We're just saying, hey, he said poisoning the blood. There's a place we've heard that before. Maybe that's why you shouldn't say it, because we've seen where bad things like that can lead, but we're not saying that he's the exact same or even super similar. Okay, chill. And yes, he's fascistic, as you're going to see me get into here. And you'll see here, I reference that Deborah Leah, the person who was just talking, that she and I had a conversation. We haven't released that yet, but we're going to on the channel. And so that's what that's about.
Start talking about his extremist language and stuff. You're missing the point. The reason he won so big is that most Americans don't think he does have extremist views. They think a lot of it is just common sense.
Maybe you didn't tell them about it, Piers.
Luke?
That is a failure of the messaging of the Democratic Party. Unfortunately, Donald Trump has said he wants to mass deport millions of people.
You know the biggest mass deporter of modern times in American history? Barack.
He should mass deport.
Barack Obama.
I'm going now.
Barack Obama deported 3 million people.
Barack Obama.
Yeah, he's the big deporter. He's one of you
I'm not a Democratic hack, Piers.
All right, Luke.
Piers, I'm not a Democratic hack. I will criticize.
Clearly.
Joe Biden has been helping commit genocide for a year and a half.
All right.
That's something you'll hear out of my mouth regularly.
Let me bring Luke in.
I'm not a hack. I call things like they are.
So I just
a lot comes out of your mouth, I've noticed repeatedly, and without breaking for breath. So
I will say, if I ever appear with Emma again, you gotta let me jump in there. Gosh, she was, that was, because I really, as you could see, was trying, but I don't want to be the one that causes just, we can't hear anything. But I was like, please, come on, I want to make a point about this.
Breath. Let me bring Luke in.
I feel like I've told you this, Piers. Deborah and I just recently had a conversation on my show. I definitely clarified this for her. No one, again, relevant, prominent Democrats in positions of power are saying Trump is Hitler. Stop with that. It's the whiniest thing. No one says that. If you think we shouldn't,
the Madison Square Garden thing was literally described as a neo-Nazi rally. A neo-Nazi rally.
When Trump's
it was full of Jewish people. There was a Holocaust survivor in the front row.
I haven't called it that. Can I please finish the dang point? The point that I don't really care about the Mika Joe thing is just, sort of cringe. But much more important is that we keep going around this merry-go-round. Oh, they called him Hitler, now this, now that. I'm sure some random people on the internet say that. But again, that's not the line from Biden and Harris. That's not the line from Trump's own former administration. So can you please...
They called him a fascist.
Biden and Harris don't say something Democrats aren't
so you think he is a fascist?
That's a horrible line to live by. Right. That's ridiculous.
All right, Luke, to be clear, Luke, you think he is a fascist?
of your behavior,
Luke,
Piers, on this
is he
show.
a fascist? Luke, is he a fascist?
Oh, of course, he absolutely exhibits fascistic tendencies.
There we go.
So why did Joe Biden invite a fascist to the White House? Is he a fascist sympathizer?
Because, I wanted to mention that from Deborah's point. If you respect democracy first and foremost,
you let a fascist in the room?
The democratic will of the people is more important than what you feel about the ideology. And it's important to point out, we have to learn from history not to equate things, but to say, okay, what signs can we get from
a peaceful transfer of power to a man you believe is a fascist?
I'm curious what you would describe, you, Piers, what you would describe trying to illegally stay in power despite losing an election. What do you call that?
I thought it was completely outrageous what Trump tried to do.
Why are you obsessed with January 6th?
But I tell you, but Luke,
I explained that to you, Deborah. You know why.
Outrageous.
Hang on.
Because you wake up and think about it all day, every day. You guys are so obsessed.
Luke asked me a question. Let me answer. Here's what I think a fascist is. A fascist is somebody who wants everybody else to conform to their narrow worldview. They want to dictate.
Okay, and then he misidentifies what fascism is, and saying someone's ideology is closer to that of fascism than being democratic is not the same as saying they're going to do all the things that a fascist in our system, right? They're not going to do all the things in our system that a fascist has done in the past. But yeah, Trump's complete lack of respect for democracy. And you'll see me bring up this next point, but what he said about media outlets, it's fascistic at the very least. If you're triggered by hearing he's a fascist, fine, leave that away. Or you don't even have to hear the word fascist at all. It's bad. Okay, that's my new thing. I don't like when Trump says the government should go after media outlets. Bad. That's the only word. Does that trigger you as well? Okay. Sorry, that was sort of annoying the way that I just said that as well. But here, Piers had tried to move on to a different segment. So I said, I'll answer the question, but first let me go back and complete my thought about this fascism debacle.
About the nominee picks, which I'm sure have sent you into some form of metaphorical anaphylactic shock. But let's go through them. I mean, here's why I look at it in totality. A, I'm going to wait for them to see who gets confirmed. B, I want to wait and see them what they do. Then I will pass judgment. But actually, if you look at a lot of them, like Linda McMahon, unbelievably successful entrepreneur in America, building one of the great businesses in modern America. Billions and billions of dollars pouring in, very strong educational bent. Why wouldn't you want someone like that running a big department in an American presidency, administration?
So just quickly closing thought on the last thing. It's crazy that we do this. Like I said, merry-go-round, we go back and forth on the fashion stuff. We're just saying, I don't like that Trump posts on Truth Social a massive fraud this type of magnitude allows for termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even though it's found in the Constitution, saying that the Constitution should be terminated.
Can we move on to the other thing? Because you're getting a bit in the weeds.
Last thing, I don't like that he said the government should come down hard on MSNBC. Stuff like that, I go, no, it looks kind of fascist. And the fact that we point that out is not us calling him Hitler. But yes, I don't think on some of them they will be less controversial. And then, yeah, I'm really concerned that, for example, Matt Gaetz could be our next Attorney General. That gives me a major ick.
Deborah?
I'm excited.
I'm sorry,
I think that this is
no, Emma, your name's not.
Okay, and then Deborah says she loves it and stuff like that. But she did indicate she wasn't super on board with Matt Gaetz. Again, you're going to see our conversation coming very soon. A lot of stuff we've been doing, so it's hard to remember when is going out when, or what is going out when. But the reason I bring up on Piers specifically the termination thing is because, number one, I don't know how you argue in defense of Trump after he said the Constitution should be terminated. That's why I bring it up so much. But that linked with him saying just 2 Truth Social posts, I think, tell you everything you need to know about Trump. The government should come down hard on MSNBC and the termination post, because it's 2 crucial constitutional principles that Trump has spit on publicly in posts that are still public. So it's a really clean, easy, whereas some of these things get too... Piers said I'm getting in the weeds. They really do get too in the weeds. I don't know how citing Trump's words is too in the weeds when we're talking about our Constitution, Piers. And that time, I'm trying, as you could tell there, to have more fun on these so that I'll keep doing them, because they do get really infuriating. You see that whenever the 2 conservatives, and even some of the time that Emma was talking, there would be these long spans where Piers wouldn't talk. And then when I would talk, he would cut me off so quickly, and it was getting on my skin. But because it's his show, I understand he's able to do that. So instead, I'm just trying to have a little bit more fun. You saw me being silly and then talking as fast as I can to get my points in before I get cut off. Because what happens is, it's not that I can't just talk over, but once he's talking, the two voices going on at once makes it so hard to hear the point I'm trying to make. And the reason I keep going on Piers specifically is because his audience is comprised of a lot of people who think they're open to different things, which is why they like the debates, but aren't actually as much as they think. And so they're center-right or MAGA. And I think the MAGA folks probably won't like what I'm saying, but maybe I catch a few people. We've received a few messages from the show of conservatives saying, you actually made some really solid points and you portrayed what a liberal could be in a way that is more reasonable than I thought. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's cool. Because I do think on some of these things, there's more common ground, but Piers is setting up a show, which is why it's growing so fast, that is playing more and more into the sort of lowest common denominator MAGA talking points. And the way he sets these up is getting more and more right wing, where the question is just, why are trans people bad? Not really, but coming from that perspective. And so try to navigate it the best I could, but super interesting that in that first clip, he explicitly said, all right, fine, you're right. I admit I was wrong. And that felt good. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Is it worthwhile to keep going on shows like this one? And get the bonus show to support the work we do by clicking that join button below.